Welcome to another episode with me, your girl Skylarking. I hope you're all having a really nice bank holiday. Today I've got a special guest who is going to come and talk to us about her business. So for those of you who don't know me, I put on these weekly shows where we talk about business, things that light people up and things that they're passionate about and things that they're doing in the community. And a lot of people don't really see what goes on behind the scenes when people are running their own businesses. They see a lot of the shiny, glamorous stuff, but not all the hard work that goes on behind closed doors. So this is a space where we're talking to entrepreneurs, people that are running their own businesses, to share that content with yourselves. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest who's with me in person today. And her name's Andrea, and she's going to tell us about what she does and how she does it. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Could you tell me a bit about yourself and what it is you do?
So, I'm a mom, first of all. So I'm a mother of two boys, 18 and 11. And a qualified teacher, qualified NLP practitioner. But around 8 years ago, I started tutoring, so alongside my teaching work. So I left my full-time teaching position, and then I started tutoring. So at the moment, I run a tutoring business, and I also host international students through that. So I have students that come from abroad, and I teach them English. They embrace the culture of our home and where we live, and that's really valuable experience for me and the family and for them when they come over. And I do tutoring online, so I'm just starting a new course that I'm doing in terms of supporting parents that want their children to go to grammar school or independent school, so I'm doing a lot around parents. So that's my tutoring business, which has been going since 2015, which just started with me just going to people's houses and tutoring. So that's my main business that I do at the moment. And then I'm also starting some new stuff as well through a passion of mine with travel. So I'm starting a retreat business, which is quite new, but I'm doing that alongside my tutoring business because that's where my passions are: travel and education, and supporting people in my local community and outside of that.
Thank you. So for those who don't know, I went on one of Andrea's retreats about 6 or 7 years ago. We went to Spain, and it was an educational retreat for parents and their children. So that we really enjoyed that. It was really, really good. So I'm looking forward to any retreats with kids.
So we had lockdown, so that kind of changed it, but hopefully we'll be able to incorporate parenting, relaxing for parents, and where they can incorporate the family as well. So
thank you.
What's going on there?
So I've got loads of questions. I want to start. I might look down from time to time. So how and why did you get started into teaching?
So very initially, I worked in sales when I left uni. So I did marketing and business, and I've always wanted to set up my own business, but didn't really know how to do it. So when I had my first child, I was like, I need a job, a career that I can give back, and that was kind of it really, a bit cliche, but I wanted to give back, do something rewarding, and also do something that fit around my family life. And people that know teachers know that although you do get the holidays, it's not really the ideal in terms of fitting around family life, because it's quite rigid in terms of when you can take holiday, you can't take holiday, you just have to set holiday and things like that. So my initial thing was around the family and giving back and making a difference, really.
Thank you. And people don't really see that, do they? Like, teaching is not always 9 to 5. You've got so much work that goes on behind the scenes in terms of planning and prepping and marking and stuff. A parents' evening, it just never seems to end.
No.
So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think I probably didn't know that going into teaching. So those first few years of teaching were very demanding. My eldest son was quite young when I retrained, and it was a lot of work, long hours, lots of work in the holidays, and then obviously after my second child, it was even more tough. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but it is challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. Ways. So how did you transition from being a teacher at school to supply teaching, and what would you say the benefits of supply teaching are?
There was no plan, which sounds quite random now when I look back, because had a lot going on at the time. I was going through a breakup, and I thought, actually, I don't have the headspace for teaching. I don't want to be here not giving my 100%. So I just handed my notice in, basically. And I was like, whatever is meant to be will be, and it will all work out. And then I updated my profile, signed up with a couple of agencies, and then I was kind of headhunted, I guess, into a school. I worked in a primary school then, so I then did a bit of a totally different to what I was doing already. I was teaching Spanish and IT, so I'd been teaching IT, that was my subject, IT and business. And then I went to do this in a primary school, which was so nice because I'd never worked in primary school. I'm qualified to work in primary and secondary, but my majority of the time was in secondary. So that was really nice. So whilst I was doing that, because it was a part-time role, I thought, I'm going to start doing some tutoring. So my son was being tutored at that time for his 11 plus, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to help people in the subjects that I can do. And I just started going to people's houses. I just did a little poster in my local library, and then I just went from there.
So
supply.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just go back to the supply. So supply came after that, because initially that's what I wanted to do, was supply, but I got kind of sucked into that job. So I did that for about a year or two, but I didn't want that kind of routine. I wanted to go and do different jobs. So I signed up to another agency, and then I started doing day-to-day work. So I would go to lots of different schools, which suited me because I could then do any other projects I was working on, and I could say yes or no. I mean, it doesn't suit everybody to have that kind of get the call in the morning and then you don't know where you're going, but actually it was quite exciting to do that, and I still do that. So yeah, there's a lot of supply work out there, and also it's a very different feeling of teaching, because you don't have the headspace of the marking and the politics that come with it, so you can actually go in, have a really good teaching day. You mean the politics
of what happens in terms of leadership, or what's happening in those in that school, with the teaching community?
You can kind of go in and come out and not speak to the adults, which are normally the people that cause the problems in schools. So it's great because you can go in, and also it's meant that I've taught so many different subjects, which I didn't
sometimes
know how to teach.
I know you've taught PE and sciences and music classes and art classes.
Yes. So I've had a wide breadth of subjects and schools, so that's taught me a lot, I think, in terms of my own teaching.
That's brilliant. So what do you think schools could be better at doing? Because you've been in lots of schools. What do you think they could be better at doing in terms of how they, teaching the children?
I think schools do get a bad press, and so does teachers, but there are lots and lots of good things going on in schools, and there's loads of amazing teachers that don't get the value. So one, I think that teachers should get more in terms of their well-being and their
being looked after.
Yes, because I've worked in the private sector. You get these away days, you get days off, you get pampering, you get little bonuses. You don't get that in teaching. You kind of, the expectation of a teacher is it's really high, and everybody that is a teacher is doing above and beyond what they should be doing as well. You've probably heard a lot of teachers say, I'm a social worker, I'm a parent, you're doing so much in the role of caregiving to these children. And I think the first thing is schools could just support teachers in a more positive way, and maybe have more trust. Even in lockdown, so many teachers were working at home and working online, and then they went back into school. There's still things that can be done online, but I feel like there's not that trust from leadership for teachers maybe to work at home or work from home when they can. It's like we always need to be doing and being in the presence of school, but you know, there's no kind of cut off. In terms of schools, I think consistency. I go into like really amazing schools that are doing really amazing stuff, and then I go into schools where I feel like the expectations of the children is low. So I think if that was across the board, you know, regardless of where children are coming from and regardless of the area, the expectations are high. We know from our own parenting, if our expectations are high, then children's own expectations are high. Not a lot of parents can offer that support to their children.
No.
So there needs to be maybe that link with parents as well, because there's no handbook for parenting.
No.
But if schools worked more with parents, I think that would be a positive thing as well.
I mean, being a parent, what I noticed a lot with my kids getting older was that once they kind of went off to secondary school, there was no kind of community.
No.
Like at primary school where you'd be at the gates, you'd drop your kids and stuff. So that would be really valuable, I think, for parents as well, because half the time we don't know what we're doing.
We don't know.
And like you say, we don't have a handbook. So, you know, sometimes when we get to the point of being able to step in and help our child, sometimes it's too late, or it's, you know, they might have had issues that could have been dealt with sooner, like learning difficulties or whatever it might be, that we can't then help support our child with because of that. So I think that's really helpful. Thank you. So you've worked in probably almost 100 school settings. What have you learnt by working in different schools? I know we've just kind of talked about, you can see the fact that there's not much consistency across the board in different schools. Do you think, what other things have you learnt by working in different schools?
For me, I've learnt a lot from being in different schools, and I think a lot of teachers would also learn that, because once you're in a school for a while, you kind of do things just that way. And like in other industries where you would go and do things in other places or have training in different places, I think that should be more of a thing as well. Maybe some collab with different schools. I used to do quite a bit of that with the first school that I worked in, and collabing with primary schools, because like you said, there's not much in terms of, they do transition days, but maybe more in terms of for parents where you can continue with that communication. But the learning, I think the main thing is just the different practices that I've learned, which have developed my own teaching skills and also given me knowledge from my own children as well, and being able to share that through my tuition and to support parents as well, because a lot of people do need help in so many areas. I think just having that knowledge or being able to network with different parents and speak to different parents is helpful. But different schools, I guess, tailor things to the types of children that they have. So that's a big thing that I've kind of learnt and seen as well. Different practices that work well in some schools, and maybe I probably go in and think, oh my God, they should do this, they should do that. So that's been.
Have you ever gone in and said that? Like when you've gone into a school, have you ever like offered suggestions, or do you just kind of?
I have given feedback, because some schools do ask for feedback from their supply staff, which I think is good, like on the children, on the what things have happened, and that I have done, yes. And obviously when I was a governor, I think I saw teaching and schools in a different light and a different side, so I'll probably see things from a business side as well as
The
teacher side,
the day-to-day.
the logistics, so there could be more in terms of that as well, of how they run, and there could be run maybe, you know, where there is more support and offerings for different people that contribute to how a school is run, basically.
Thank you. And I was going to ask you actually, because both our children are in year 6, what do you think about the SATs?
Oh, well, I've been reading lots and lots of different opinions about the SATs, and I find it really quite interesting, and different opinions. I mean, do I think it's necessary to test kids at that point? No. In the way that it's done, I think you can test children without them having the pressures, without them, you know, thinking, oh my God, I really need to pass or get a good grade for this to make a difference for secondary school. So I think the big thing is the way that the schools are delivering the SATs. That obviously has a big impact on how the child is, and also what's going on at home. Some parents are like, you know, SATs is not important, don't worry about it, where other parents may be given a different kind of, you know, viewpoint on it. However, secondary schools are going to do their own kind of baselining, and there's nothing wrong with a school maybe looking at where the children are at when they leave, but maybe not in that kind of
way. So I was in India last month, and in India you can't move up a year unless you pass the yearly tests. So I found that quite interesting that they're testing more regularly over there, and it just made me think like it would make it probably. I think in my case, with my daughter, it would have made her feel less anxious if she did more regularly testing year to year, maybe, you know...
Instead of just the one at the end.
Yeah, because there's this whole big build-up, and then, you know, they're just... Yeah, it's quite stressful for some children.
Because they've not had that experience.
No.
So I do agree, something regular to make it kind of the norm. My kids obviously both did the 11 plus entrance exam. So I think that helped in terms of SATs did not seem nowhere near the same kind of experience of that, because they go to a centre, it's not even in an environment that they're used to. Some people are against that as well, but I think that what they're going to get in secondary school is way more pressured, so having that exposure early is not necessarily a bad thing.
Absolutely.
It's more about you educating your child is to just doing your best, not getting anxious about it. If they are anxious about it, speaking to them and having those communication about, you know, why. Because obviously, in the next part of their education, they are going to be tested in lots of different things. So I do agree that not having that big emphasis in year 6, where they're already going to have the transition, you know, to secondary school, which is already a big thing. So now slapping in a big test at the end is not great timing.
No. I mean, and I think as well, as we're getting older, we go for interviews, we have tests when we go for interviews, for different positions. I think it would just make better sense to equip and have that consistency with all children across the board.
And the exposure to different things. Things like interviewing, I think is really important. That is something I do with the kids when you know, getting them to speak in front of people is a really important skill. They do it loads in primary school. When they get to secondary school, it's kind of like I don't know, it changes a little bit. Maybe the structure is different in the classroom, or it's kind of done in some subjects and not others. And some schools will do things like debating club.
Yes,
but I think every school should be doing that.
Absolutely.
Every school should be encouraging kids to get up and speak. I mean, not my primary school, my secondary school didn't really encourage that. When I went to uni, it was like, right, you're going to do a presentation in front of 150 people. I'm like, oh my God. Now I talk for a living, like, all the time.
Yeah.
But then I was like the quiet kid in school. So I think that those kind of things do get the confidence out of children, and then they don't have as much anxiety because they're being exposed. The more you expose them up until 10, they're not scared of those things afterwards. It's not things that you can teach them, but it's things that they can experience, and then it's not as big a deal. It's not, you know,
that's not that
it's not
build-up.
scary.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. That's so important. So your eldest son, as you mentioned, went to grammar school. He did his 11 plus. He went to grammar school, and your son that's going into secondary school now has been accepted to a prestigious boarding school with his sporting and academic abilities. So what's your secret to building smart, resilient, adept young people?
Oh, I don't know if there's a secret. I want to make the point as well, because I think a lot of people sometimes think that I went to private school or I went to a grammar school, and I didn't. I went to the local school. My mum didn't do any of this whole going around schools. My mum probably didn't even know what the 11 plus was. I didn't until kids were saying, oh, did you do the 11 plus? I was like, well, what on earth is that? So it's only my own research. So I know a lot of people that went to grammar school or went to private school or went to boarding school, they automatically go down that route for their child. For me, it just started with me just seeing something in my child when he was at nursery and thinking, oh, I need to really be thinking about his education route. And my family are very education focused, and they always, like from my grandparents, always said that education is like what leads you into different opportunities, etc. So I was quite early on doing a lot of research about schools and going into, this was even before I started teaching, going into primary schools and looking at what the best school was for my eldest. So I went to the school that he went to, and then I actually moved house to get him into that school.
And that happens a lot. People move home.
Yes, and I didn't own a property at that time. I just moved. I found a house, rented a property near to the school, and that gave him a really good primary school experience. It wasn't private or anything, but it was just a little one-form entry school. And then I just tried to give him a very well-rounded, balanced childhood, really. So not, oh my God, you're going to study every day, which some people might think I do with my kids, but I don't. I think it's just about balance. So doing lots of extracurricular activities. So we did an instrument, we tried to do languages at home and at school, loads of sports, because obviously boys have loads of energy. So I was like, you can do something every day, because you've got the energy to do it, and also it's about learning and meeting new different people as well. So we do lots of activities at school and outside of school. And then I started researching the whole 11 plus route. I didn't know as much as I do now then, because now I've found out that you can do things from primary school and things like that. So I just did the research, bought the books. Then I found a tutor for him who said, oh my God, you're really late. You shouldn't be tutoring him. He's missed a whole year of tuition, which is obviously a bit of a lie, because you can tutor your child at any stage. Some people do the whole thing at home. It just depends on the child and what works for them. And I think that is the key to all parenting, because what has worked for my eldest didn't work for my youngest. They learn in different ways. They
have different learning styles.
Exactly. And they'll have strengths in different areas, and there's lots of different things. So I think the secret is being well balanced and finding the right school that matches your child. So that may not even be grammar school. It might be a school that focuses on sports. It may be an independent school that focuses on something else. So I think it's just finding the right school for them.
I agree. For me personally, all my children have gone to different secondary schools.
And not many people do that. And I think that is a real good thing, because you're looking at each child as an individual rather than, okay, my first child went there, so he's going to go there as well. It just doesn't.
No, for me, it doesn't, it's not going to fit every child. So one went to one school because of basketball, one went to one school because of the football, and I think, a lot of us don't really consider that. We will just send our children, like me and my brother went to the same school.
My brother had no chance. Like the second child, you're going to be going to the school where your older sibling went. That's just, how it goes. But I think more people are probably looking at different schools for their children, and having the conversation as well
Yeah.
with your child
Yeah.
when you go to see the schools. So my own opinion of the schools sometimes are different to the kids as well. So with my eldest, we went to one grammar school, we went to a private school which he absolutely loved, and then we went to a school that we hadn't considered because it was the single sex. He loved it. It was really sports focused as well as grammar. So it's just having that balance of different activities. It can't just be academic, can't just be all the other extracurriculars, and finding the right school for the right child, I think, is
And
the key.
I would even go as far as saying, if you feel like you need to move your child while they're at secondary school,
Absolutely.
don't ever feel afraid of doing that as well, because they can always
They
grow,
adapt, and they will adapt.
and by experiencing meeting different people from different school settings as well, that all adds to their learning as well, and being able to converse with different people and
Absolutely.
network with other young
Yeah.
people as well.
Which is what life is about. And,
Yes.
and my eldest did go to 2 different grammar schools, so he did up to year 11 at one, which was single sex, and then he moved to
The grammar school he's at
Vietnam,
now,
which
yeah.
is mixed, and he's had a totally different experience there.
Yes.
But still has friends from his old school, and just different experiences from the teachers and the way the schools run. So all of that's been really, really good for him, I think, as well, seeing different perspectives.
And different teaching, and
Yeah.
then they're going off to uni, and then they're going to meet more different
Definitely.
peers, teachers, and it just adds to
And it's
that.
doing the research, because, the school that my youngest is going to, I didn't know that much about either. So it was doing the research and, finding different schools, and there are a lot of schools that specialise in different things. So I think it's just doing that research. Don't necessarily think about what's on your doorstep,
Yes.
because kids are also not going to be 11 forever.
And they're going to travel
They will be
to
able
go
to
to
travel.
work, so why not
Yeah.
travel for school?
And I see so many children travelling now to school. I think that is a good thing, because we do a lot of mollycoddling, so even if you can't get your child to the school, it's good for them to experience public
And
transport.
get some
from a
travel
young age.
training
Yeah.
and so on, and awareness, situational awareness of how to get from A to B,
Yeah.
and
Read
what
the-
happens when there's a strike and I need to now find a
Absolutely.
different way home.
Yeah.
So it's really
The
really
the
positive.
student that is coming to me in the summer is 13, and she's coming from a different country to stay with me. So our kids can travel, on a train or a bus to different places. It's all
It's all
character
part of
building,
learning, yeah.
life, builds confidence. There's loads of skills that it brings.
So my son did this. The eldest, he went away to school, and he travelled quite a distance, and now he can just go anywhere. I don't have a fear of him
No.
travelling, because I know he's now got the skill set to find his way around.
Absolutely.
So and I think that
It's
so
really-
don't be scared, parents, of finding a school that's right for your child and it's not on your doorstep. They will adapt to finding their way
Yeah.
to school. And actually, even if you do car shares, some parents will do car shares.
Yes,
There
I'm
are
doing that.
you're doing a car share. Some parents are doing there'll be coaches that go to particular schools. So don't let distance ever put you off from sending your child somewhere. So tell me about your tutoring business. So how did you get started?
So I started just going to people's houses initially, and I really, really wanted to do a whole online thing, but that wasn't a thing pre-lockdown, as we know. I then worked with a local community centre, because I wanted to really help the people in my area as well, raise aspirations, not just for grammar school, but just raising confidence, and being confident, and also giving kids that independence, because a tutor is not just for passing an exam, it also gives confidence, gives them a bit of work ethic,
And accountability
and knowing that sometimes you do need to put a bit of extra work into certain things in your, not just in academics, but maybe in sports, etc. So I had a centre, had children come into the centre. My kids would be involved in this as well, so that was really, really good. But then we had lockdown. So I'd done that in a couple of different places, and I did go to people's houses, but then eventually that ended up being a group setting, and I'd have different ages of children as well. So I wouldn't be like, you can only be year 4. I'd have lots of different ages, which I think is also good, because at school you're just in your own age group, whereas kids will learn from older and younger children.
And in life, we're not
in
working
bracket,
exactly. No. So I think I remember as well with when my son used to play professional football, they'd always play up.
Yes.
You're always going to learn
from
others, like you say.
Absolutely.
And even at secondary school, I think they had like peer sort of, you'd have a peer buddy,
yes.
And they'd have it with students older. It would be linear or vertical, but I loved it because they'd have not all schools do this, and this is why schools I think should be consistent. In
especially the things that really work that are good.
Yeah.
Because if you have all year 7s together, which some schools do, you know, they're just in that whole little bubble. Even just with a year up, if you've got a little mentor. They did that at my eldest son's school, and it also gives the older kids responsibility to help the younger kids. These are skills that, again, you can't teach, but they will learn through experience.
Absolutely. And learn by doing as well.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of young people learn better from young people.
Yeah, I mean,
so they'll listen more.
Absolutely. So your tutoring business, post lockdown, it was inspired by your son and his own 11+ journey, and then you, during the pandemic, went online. So are you still?
Yeah, so I'm still doing online. So pandemic, I think, was a panic for everyone. We were like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? I was doing supply at the time, so I wasn't in a school. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to actually do? I won't be able to have students, won't be able to have international students, won't be able to do anything, because everything I was doing was face to face. So I was like, right, I'm going to do some online work and figure out what I'm going to do. So I just people started to contact me as well, because they had children that maybe were not getting support from their schools. I think this is where we saw a lot of inconsistencies. Yourself, if you've got children in different schools, one school would be doing something really well. Some, even my own kids, even though they were primary and secondary, some things were done amazingly well and some were not. And so some schools weren't doing any live lessons. So I was kind of filling the gap, some for schools, some for just kids trying to get through GCSEs, and support outside of the school environment as well. So that worked, and then so I've continued doing online tuition, which has been good. And I get to work with children that are not just in my area now, so that's good. And I'm able to broaden who I work with. I'm trying to do a lot more group sessions as well, so that I can, one, help more people, help more children, and also have that support with parents as well. So that works well. Online, I think people were afraid of, because, some people still say, I really want face-to-face. But for me, the logistics of working that around my own children, and for parents themselves, it's so much easier to say to your child, log on.
Yeah.
My youngest had piano lessons online in lockdown, and imagine you have to go to that play. You can just fit more in, because that is the world that we're living in, and there's nothing wrong with embracing technology.
Absolutely.
As long as we have some balance.
Absolutely.
Again.
So at the time of lockdown, I was working with a disability charity, managing a project, and all the cohorts I'd had previous to that were we were delivering training to people with disabilities to bring up their confidence. The cohort, I then transitioned to doing it online, and the course was oversubscribed, and it just meant we were able to reach so many more people that would never have normally been able to do the course. And that for me was a real big eye opener, because we could have easily said we're not running the course, but we did, and we did it kind of. I think most people did things quite scared because they didn't know if things were going to work out. But surprisingly, it's the way of the world now. We are doing a lot more things online. Mine did keyboards over lockdown. We had science, English tuition. We had family meetings over Zoom. So it is the way of the world.
And our boys were obviously doing GCSEs around that time.
Yeah, but I will agree with you. Like, different schools did things very differently, and I saw that as well with my own children. And I think there is a lot to be said about having consistency across secondary school education, and I think that needs to be done at a strategic level to be able to be cascaded down to all children so that all children can thrive. So I actually want to ask you, what kind of tips would you have, one, for somebody who's a teacher that might feel a bit stuck, who's thinking about starting either their own tutoring business or supply work, like getting into supply work? What would you suggest to that teacher? How to go about?
I think it's definitely about weighing up your well-being alongside financially. Obviously, there is the downside where you don't get paid in the holidays, but there are agencies like the one that I work for that manage it so that you can kind of have money going into a little bank of holiday funds, so you can still take that money out when you need to. For me, the supply has worked well alongside tuition because it kind of it balances out. So if you're someone that maybe wants to do a new venture, and not even if it's not tuition, it gives you that flexibility, because if you're in a school doing a lot of hours, you don't necessarily have that free time.
Or the headspace
is the big one, to be able to do anything else. So therefore people do feel stuck, and you're not necessarily going to want to drop a day's pay, or so I guess it gives that flexibility, but it does depend on the circumstance of the person. But perhaps doing a balance of taking on the tuition and balancing it out with the supply does work.
Thank you.
And even considering things like long-term supply, so you don't need to do the extremities that I do, where I do a different day in a different place. I've had long-term work as well.
Where you've been at school for that
kind of thing. So it's still a little bit less stress, but you still have that.
You can build a rapport with the students.
Absolutely.
And get to know them. Thank you. So what tips do you have for parents who are looking at secondary schools in the autumn?
So on social media, I see lots of people asking for advice about secondary school, and I think that is a big no. Do not ask other people for advice, because my opinion, your opinion will be totally different. Our experiences of a school will be totally different, even if our children went to the same school.
100%.
Our children's experience will be different to each other's. So it just stems back to finding the right school for you. You can get information on, general things, but you're never going to know if that's a fit for your school until you go and look at the school. So visiting the school way in advance. Obviously, if your child is now going into year 6, it doesn't matter. But if you have a child, even in year 3 or year 4, go and see the school. One, it gives the child a bit of a eye-opener of what secondary school's like. It makes it less daunting for them when it gets to the year 6 stage. People probably think I'm a bit crazy because I did go quite early with both my kids.
I went in year 5 with mine.
Yeah, but I think there's nothing wrong with them just seeing, okay, so when I leave this school, I'm going to go and do this, and I'll do lots of different subjects, and this is the setup. So when you get to, obviously, year 5 and 6, it's not as overwhelming. Go to the open days, but obviously the open days are the shiny glitz and glamour of creme de la creme. Teachers have been working on all the displays and making everything.
They've got the best students out showing you
around. It's the sales pitch. So go to that, because obviously you want to see how much effort they're putting into the sales pitch, because that is inconsistent as well. If they're going all out, it's still a good sign, because they care, they want to get people into the school. But I think it's also really important to go in the school day, speak to the children and see what happens operationally in the day. Also, you can be a real stalker and go around the school when the kids are leaving the school and before, because that says a lot about the kids as well, how they're, getting to and from school, if they're a nuisance and that kind of thing, because your child is going to be in that
environment,
environment. So I think that's good. And just going to see the school at different points. I even went to see a show, I think, at like, if you've got somebody that you know who's at the school, maybe going to see a school show or things like that.
And schools can change, can't they, throughout the years? A bad school might not necessarily be a bad school in 3 or 4 years' time. So
absolutely.
So,
the reputation of a school is, for one, when a school's outstanding, they don't get Ofsteded again for a very long time. So it's still worth going in to look at the school and looking at the types of teachers and will your child fit into what's going on in the school. Also, don't just look at Ofsted, because that's just a one-day thing. And even if a school has had a bad Ofsted, it depends what the bad thing was.
yes.
So I think people need to be aware of that. If a school...
Sometimes leadership is amazing, sometimes it's not. And I think you can't just base it on that one snapshot moment in time.
No, because you could have an amazing school with amazing teachers that are all doing well, but something happened with the head, or something happened with one of the leadership, or they didn't have paper. There's quite a lot that can have a detrimental effect on the overall Ofsted.
It's very rigorous. I mean, I've been Ofsted inspected for my childcare business, and they're very thorough, and it's just it's full on.
And there has been a lot, obviously, around the Ofsted topic
and the process.
And as a teacher, I am not actually anti-Ofsted, because I've learnt a lot from being Ofsteded as a teacher, and
I use it to improve my practice in so many ways.
And being grilled as Ofsted as chair of governors, which was not great, but it was also feedback, and feedback is brilliant. So, because it helps with improving anything, and we need
100%,
that.
Yeah.
But I think
how else do we...
Can't grow, can't develop. Even if you're amazing and you've been doing things amazing, you still need feedback on how to maintain it or how to improve it. You might have a different cohort of children that needs to be adapted.
Different demographics,
absolutely.
As the areas change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what I do think would be more beneficial is more ongoing little mini reviews throughout school.
Thank you so much. So I know you've got a course coming out soon, so could you please tell us a little bit about that, and tell us where everybody can find you online?
So I have my main my personal page, Andrea Walters 1. So you'll see a little bit about me, my family, and what I do. Sometimes that ties in with business as well. My Succeed Tutoring Services is my business page for my tutoring. So you'll see a little bit about what I'm doing tutoring wise. And then obviously I've got my new retreat page, which is going to offer some bespoke retreats for teachers, because as I said earlier, that is a tapped in area that isn't really tapped in, and we want our teachers and educators to have that nurturing support, so
the
that
well-being side of things.
so that they're going into school feeling good, so that we get the best out of them and they can have a healthy, balanced life. So the course that I'm starting on the Monday the 5th of June, so just after half term, is an 11 plus support package kind of thing. It's running up until the summer holidays, and in the summer holidays it'll be 11 plus prep for year 4 or year 5 pupils, but I'm also adding in parent support, because I'm getting so much in terms of people wanting support, not just for grammar school, but obviously for the transition, where to go, what to do, that kind of thing. And also my eldest son is going to do a little Q&A with me as well, so you can obviously hear from a young person's
First-hand
point
from
of view.
being at grammar school.
Because we're far removed. I'm a teacher, but I'm not a pupil, so...
And you're also a parent.
Yeah, so my perspective is valid and important, but I think it's also good to speak to young people
Absolutely.
about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to Andrea Walters talk about her tutoring business, talk about teaching, and please let us know what you thought about this conversation in the comments, and please follow Andrea at Succeed Tutoring. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.